With a shuddering breath, Jace knelt in the damp grass, the scent of rain-soaked earth rising around him as the sun dipped low on the horizon. The vibrant hues of orange and purple painted the sky, each stroke a reminder of his dwindling time. Jace had worn the label of criminal for too long, a past marked by reckless choices and a string of bad decisions. But today he was not just a man seeking freedom, he was a man fighting against the very fabric of karma, which hung heavy in the air like the looming storm clouds. Only hours remained before the parole board would decide his fate, and he needed to balance the scales of his insatiable karmic debt. Each misdeed from his past pulsed visibly around him, a swirling mass of dark energy that seemed to mock him with every tick of the clock. The stakes were painfully clear. If he failed to counteract his wrongs before sunset, he would remain shackled to his past, both in prison and in spirit. He had a plan, a desperate attempt to offset the shadows that clung to him. The old lady at the end of the street, Mrs. Waverly, needed her garden tended. He remembered her frail frame hunched over her flower beds, struggling to maintain the blooms that once radiated joy. Jace had stolen from her once, a petty act that now felt like a dagger to his heart. He rose, his resolve bolstered by the thought of her grateful smile, and hurried down the street, the chill of the approaching dusk biting at his skin. As he reached her house, he found Mrs. Waverly struggling to clear away weeds that choked her beloved roses. "Can I help?" he called out, his voice breaking the silence of the neighborhood. She looked up, surprise etching her features, but her eyes held a flicker of hope. "Oh dear, that would be lovely," she replied, her voice trembling but warm. Jace knelt beside her, the earth cool and comforting beneath his hands. He worked diligently, his fingers digging into the soil, pulling weeds and nurturing the fragile blooms. For every rose he uncovered, the swirling shadows around him seemed to dim, a glimmer of light peeking through his guilt. Yet, just as he began to feel a sense of accomplishment, a sharp pang of doubt struck him. What if this wasn't enough? What if the board dismissed his efforts as mere acts of charity? As the sun began to set, he could feel the weight of time pressing down. There was still so much to do, and his heart raced as he remembered the local park where children often played. A small girl had lost her beloved teddy bear, and he had witnessed her tears from a distance. The thought of her anguish ignited something within him. He sprinted to the park, scanning the area for any sign of the toy, the urgency of his mission filling him with energy. He searched frantically, lifting benches and peering behind bushes until he spotted a flash of brown under a slide. With renewed vigor, he crawled toward it, grasping the teddy bear and holding it aloft like a trophy. The moment he handed it back to the girl, her face lighting up with joy sent ripples of warmth through him. But as she hugged the bear tightly, shadows flickered around him, lessening slightly but still present. Had this been enough? His heart sank as he glanced at the sky. The sun was now a thin sliver on the horizon, and desperation washed over him. He turned and ran back toward Mrs. Waverly, his mind racing. He needed one more act, something to tip the scales in his favor. As he approached her house again, he saw her struggle with a heavy box, her frail hands trembling from the effort. Without thinking, he rushed forward, taking the box from her and lifting it with ease. "Thank you, dear," she gasped, her eyes wide with gratitude. As he carried the box inside, he felt the shadows swirling around him shift, the weight of his past lifting just a little. He finished setting the box down and turned to find her watching him with an expression that felt like forgiveness. In that moment, the light of the setting sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the two of them in a warm glow. As the last rays of light disappeared, he stood before the parole board, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the weight of the past still clinging to him, but something had changed. The dark energy that had once surrounded him felt lighter, transformed by a series of small, genuine acts. As he spoke, recounting his day of good deeds and the joy he had witnessed, he felt the shadows within him begin to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of hope. The board listened, their faces inscrutable, but he sensed a shift in the air. When they finally delivered their verdict, time slowed, and he held his breath. The decision felt like a weighty moment, one that could shatter or heal him. As they ruled in his favor, the shadows that had haunted him slipped away, replaced by the warmth of redemption. Jace stepped into the world beyond the prison gates, knowing he had finally begun to rewrite his story.